Okay, hey guys, welcome back. It's the Red Shadow once more, and this is the next video that I had planned on doing. And this is another vlog, basically, just me sitting here talking about gaming stuff. But I want to talk about things in gaming specific that have been on my mind recently. A lot of this stems from such things as E3 or, the replacement for E3 this year. E3 had its event, but it was all, online digital presentations, just like we had last summer, but there wasn't an official E3 last year. This year there was, as well as other things, Jeff Keighley's Summer Games something, I can't remember, Summer Game Show or Summer Game Showcase. And there's more things down the road, and all of the different major publishers are doing events. Today there was both a Sony State of Play, the first Sony thing that we've had in several months, I think since April, or no, in May there was that Horizon Forbidden West State of Play. But there's more stuff to come over the course of the summer, and the whole summer event or the summer, all of the events for the summer are basically from the Summer Games Fest. That's what it was. The kickoff show, kickoff live, and then leading through to Gamescom, which is in August. Anyway, today there was, like I said, a State of Play, and then there was an EA, do they just call theirs EA Play? See, it's hard to, when they divvy them up like that, you got Ubisoft Forwards and EA Plays and Sony State of Play, Nintendo Direct, and so much more. But we know that Gamescom in August is basically the last thing. Today I was my memory was refreshed because, like I said, of the State of Play and EA Play that happened today. They were kind of what convinced me, I guess, to make sure that I did this one, in addition to the vlog and the pickups video that I've already filmed. However they end up uploading, I don't know, but I had to write down some of the stuff I wanted to talk about on this. So first of all, I just want to talk about E3 in general, so far what we've had. And I'll start with today, the State of Play that Sony did, where Sony set up expectations beforehand on the PlayStation blog as to what this State of Play was going to be today, which was mainly about 9 minutes of Deathloop gameplay, and then the rest of the roughly half-hour show, so about 20 minutes, was going to be indies and third-party stuff. They stated specifically no, further Horizon Forbidden West stuff, no new word about the God of War Ragnarok or whatever it's going to be called, and then they weren't going to talk about anything to do with their next-gen VR system, which has been announced, sort of, and they've shown off the new handheld controllers for it, but they haven't really said or done anything more about it, like when it's coming out. Is it going to be backwards compatible with the old PS4 VR games, like the PSVR stuff? The VR stuff doesn't really do much for me. VR looks really cool, and I would love to be able to do it, but it's a lot of money for something that I don't know won't cause me motion sickness and headaches and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to spend that money to take the chance on something, even if those things look really cool. So anyway, they said there would be none of that. They stated what was going to happen. I saw the show. It was a decent State of Play. For me, anything, especially in the summer when E3 is going on, anything Sony is going to intrigue me. But there wasn't much shown during that interested me. Deathloop is a game I've already seen enough. It looks cool. If I ever have a PS5, I would probably get it. But I don't have a PS5, and I don't know if I'm going to. I'll talk about that sometime in this video. But I've seen enough of Deathloop, but I understand how important it is to show the game off from the standpoint of it being a Bethesda game And Bethesda, another one of those funny things that's happened since the last time I've done my YouTube stuff, is Bethesda is now owned by Microsoft, and pretty much all of their games going forward are just going to be on Xbox platforms, you know, the Xbox Series S and X, Game Pass, we're going to talk about that, but also like on PC and through the PC Game Pass and on xCloud, so being able to take your mobile devices and be able to play something like that on it. And of course, a lot of rumors that someday something like Game Pass or Xbox itself is going to like be built into your smart TVs. And if it's an app that can go onto a smart TV or a Roku or a streaming device, then why couldn't it be an app that might show up on your Switch or your PlayStation console? Game Pass is an interesting thing, and that's another thing I want to talk about. But as far as this state of play today went, it showed, like I said, Deathloop. You kind of have to understand and expect that it's going to be talked about, because for right now it's a timed PS5 exclusive. Everything I've heard is that it will come later to Xbox platforms, but for now it's only going to be on PlayStation. Just like Ghostwire Tokyo, which is a game that I wish they would show more of, because I've only really seen like a couple trailers for that. And as much as Deathloop does look fun, I think Ghostwire Tokyo is a game that would be more up my alley. And then like the indies and other things that they showed, Sifu is a really cool looking game. It looks better now than it did even the first time. It got its release date pushed back from sometime in 2021 to early 2022. Cool. I don't have a problem with game delays and all that. That's another topic I'm going to talk about. But there was some sort of a fighting battle royale game that was shown that didn't do anything for me. They showed Moss 2, a VR game. Because of the VR thing, it doesn't do much for me, even though Moss looked like a really cool game when it first came out. There was some other stuff that's kind of been shown multiple times that didn't do much for me. If I'm disappointed in the state of play, it's only because they didn't show like Stray, the cat game. That looks really cool. They didn't show more of Kena Bridge of Spirits. That game looks beautiful and amazing. And there were a few other indies from last year that were shown, I think, in the PS5 reveal event that I haven't seen anything, like Goodbye Volcano High and The Little Devil Inside, and there's some other stuff. But all in all, it was a decent state of play, and I'm not going to take it to task for the reasons that I hear people talking about, but I'm going to talk about that here later in the video. I want to go back to E3 proper. E3 proper had some amazing shows. Nintendo's Direct was great. Metroid Dread, that's all I really have to say. Anything Zelda is amazing, but I haven't played Breath of the Wild, so Breath of the Wild 2 is a game I could probably see myself playing years down the road. Hell, I haven't finished Ocarina of Time, and that's my favorite game. And because I haven't finished Ocarina of Time, I haven't touched Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild, because I want to kind of play them in progression. Even though I know I don't have to, it's a stupid thing in my brain where it's like, beat one game in the series before you move on to the next ones. I've broke that rule a million times, but with Zelda, I'm kind of holding off on that. So Zelda's awesome, and lots of people love it. Breath of the Wild was highly rated all over the place. Most people were really into the change into a more open world with the crafting and breakable weapons. That would be a problem for me, but like I said, until I play it, I can't really speak to that. But Metroid Dread blew my mind. That was awesome. And a bunch of other things that they showed in there were really cool. And overall, it just seemed like a really good Nintendo Direct. The Microsoft Bethesda showcase was really, really cool. For a guy who doesn't have any Microsoft consoles other than the 360, who doesn't have any plans on getting any of their consoles, who doesn't care about the Game Pass thing, they still had a great show. I can look at that and be excited for games even if I'm never going to play them. I can also be excited for stuff that excites other people even if I'm never going to play them. Like, I will not shit on something that somebody does because it's not particularly pushing all the right buttons for me. I watched the Ubisoft show, which was okay. It showed some stuff that was interesting to me and stuff that wasn't. I also watched the Square Enix one and the Capcom ones. Those were both fine, but a lot of people had problems with them. Anywhere from Capcom not really showing a whole lot of new cool stuff that people wanted to see, or spending too much time on like Monster Hunter, and there was something else shown by them that I think people were upset about, but I don't recall off the top of my head. And then the Square show, people were really... The Guardians of the Galaxy game, everybody went into that being like, it's more Avengers and nobody wants that live service stuff. But they said it's a single-player game where you kind of control the whole crew. I think that game looks really cool, and that might be something I would play down the road. The other big thing from their show that I remember people being particularly vocal about was the Final Fantasy Origin, and then it has a silly title after that, which is, it just sounds like Square stuff to me, but it was rumored beforehand to be Final Fantasy Dark Souls. It was supposed to be, people were thinking it was going to be something that would mix the two universes together, a Dark Souls style, like, hard game in a Final Fantasy universe, and people were saying, it would probably look amazing. And then they saw the graphics and they saw the character models and they were like, oh, that's not so great. I thought the character models kind of looked like something out of a Deadly Premonition game, but I don't care if the graphics aren't amazing, if that's not what they were going for. If they're going for some sort of a style, even if the style isn't necessarily what you think is beautiful or exquisite, I hope that game ends up being good for the people who will get into it. It had a demo shortly thereafter that was broken. I don't know if they really ever got it up and running perfectly. I don't know what people's overall opinion of it is. All I know is that it doesn't do much for me because I'm not into Souls-style games. And then there were some shows that I didn't watch, but I heard some shows got really bad ratings. Koch Media, the Gearbox presentation. There was one that I watched, the Bandai Namco one, where they spent the whole time basically talking about the next Dark Pictures anthology game. That was a little strange for them to just pick one game and sit on that for the whole thing, but it's a game I'm interested in playing. So let me bridge... let's talk about the Summer Games Fest kickoff live show that Jeff Keighley did. That was sort of like his E3 show. That was pretty cool. It had some... Keighley is known for, getting all the cool game trailers and announcements and all that, and he came through in it, even though a lot of it is stuff that doesn't mean anything to me. I was excited for the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, the Borderlands spin-off, as the guy who's kind of been anti-Borderlands for a long time, even though I now own all of them. Someday I will play them, but that game may not necessarily speak directly to me, but I'm still excited for the fact that it's something new in that universe and that other people will probably be interested in it. And I hope that it's good for them. I hope people will like it. And then at the end of the show was the big announcement, the final re-reveal, I guess you would call, of Elden Ring. And once again, as I said before with Square, it's a Souls game. This time it's Souls mixed with George R.R. Martin, the guy behind Game of Thrones, him kind of creating world and scenario and whatnot, and then the FromSoft guys, turning it into a game. I just know that one was something that a lot of people were really excited about, so it was cool to me that it got announced and people were hyped for it. Like I said, it doesn't do anything for me, so I'm not going to sit there and shit on something because of it. Okay, there were other games in there. There was some other stuff that did look interesting and fun to me. I don't recall. I didn't take notes because at the time I was just watching them to enjoy it. But I know there was other stuff in there that was interesting. But I want to finally transition to the next big thing I wanted to talk about, which I wrote some basic notes down here. Not basic notes on what I wanted to talk about. Like I said, not notes about the shows that I watched or anything, but basic notes of things to sit down here and chat with you guys, whoever might actually sit here and watch this. So the next part I wanted to talk about, I've entitled Expectations, and that's something that's been drilled into my brain for a long time, but especially in like video gaming, people's expectations. And I'm not talking about like Sony putting on the blog what today's State of Play was going to be about. I'm talking about just in general. Why have we gotten to a point where we shit on an E3 presentation from some company because it didn't have 5 amazing, never before seen, hyped up reveals of things that you didn't know were coming, but you're like, oh yeah, that's something freaking sweet. You realize that these companies cannot keep up that pace all the time. Sure, it's probably a little bit the fault of a company like Sony for those couple of E3s in like 2015, 2016 time, and some of their other shows when they were doing their PSX shows, and they were dropping a lot of these big things that people were really excited about. I don't think it's any coincidence that Sony doesn't really do E3 anymore and that they stopped doing their PSX show. I think they knew, and maybe they'd even experienced, the Sony fans, and I'm a Sony pony, if you want to call me that. I'm a Sony fan. That's my preferred console. Has been since the PS1. It probably always will be. But they probably have had a lot of people who are like, oh my god, that show that you guys did where Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced, and Shenmue 3 Kickstarter, and Last Guardian came back after being gone for almost a decade, and then when you had the God of War reveal, and we saw Horizon Zero Dawn for the first time, like, so many people just about had meltdowns over that kind of stuff, and they got addicted. It was like Sony took a syringe full of all that goodness and just injected it right into people's arms, and they were just like, oh my god, all of those games. That every time that they did an E3 show, every time that they were at Gamescom or CES or the Game Awards, the Tokyo Game Show, their own PSX thing that they did for 3 or 4 years, everybody was just like, what are they going to put on the show this week, this year, this month, this time? What is it going to be? And then when it would just be games that weren't ginormous AAA mega blockbusters or revivals of old franchises that we haven't seen forever, everybody is so frothing at the mouth these days for the Silent Hills thing, the Kojima thing to come back. I'm not going to get into it, but there was this recent thing about what they thought was some independent developer teasing Silent Hills and a Kojima project, even though Kojima wasn't the person standing there saying that was what was going on, and it's a big conspiracy, and people are still buying into it. I don't know. Whatever it is, if it is an independent developer trying to come up with a game and they're just not really good with how to best market it, and it ends up biting them in the ass through something that may or may not be their fault. If it ends up not being anything to do with Kojima, like I said, I hope it's a good, decent game. I hope that they find success and that they don't just get... I imagine the Steam review bombing kind of stuff of people just rejecting their game, whatever it is, because it's not a Kojima game. It was not some mysterious conspiracy that everybody thought they were picking apart and figuring it out. That said, on the flip side, if it does end up being a Kojima project and it has something to do with Silent Hills or whatever it may be, awesome. But But maybe Kojima and anybody else that has anything to do with it in the future will tone that stuff down, because the internet gaming community and the internet community in general are too much. They're too much. I'm not going to fall off the cliff here with, cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. I want to just talk about video gaming alone. But this expectation stuff, once again, going back to that's the key word, expectations. People have got to keep that shit in check, because they are really turning me off to gaming in 2021 due to this kind of stuff. So many people that I watch on YouTube, so many of my favorite channels fell victim to calling some of these presentations the worst fucking thing they've ever seen before. Horrible, total trash. Burn it with fire, kill it all. Next. This is bullshit. I'm not going to be on Sony anymore. Xbox has got it all wrapped up now because this thing didn't happen and that thing was supposed to happen but didn't happen. We're still in a coronavirus epidemic. We're still feeling the effects of the stuff that was delayed and put off last year, when it really, when COVID really started up initially. Things are different. The world is different. And you might be stuck at home all day long and you're waiting for the next thing to come up on YouTube and to consume it, and you're expecting it to hit all these specific marks. That doesn't always happen. And it's not just Sony too. Like I said, Nintendo. During the Nintendo Direct, I watched a few different people on YouTube who put up like live reactions or their reactions to those presentations, and I saw some people near the end of the Direct, like, counting down how much time there was left for Nintendo to talk about Breath of the Wild 2. They're under no obligation to show Breath of the Wild 2, and neither is any other company under any obligation to show any other game. Microsoft didn't have to show Halo Infinite. Sony didn't have to show, whatever. And Nintendo didn't have to show Breath of the Wild 2 if there was nothing to show. They did show it, but they had a few other things beforehand, and I got really upset because I watched some people say, wait a minute, the expansion pass for Age of Calamity, Hyrule Warriors is your big thing? And they were freaking out. And then there was like, oh, there's more stuff. And then they talked about Skyward Sword. Oh, we already know about Skyward Sword. We don't need that. Even though that's a game that's coming out like next month or whenever, or this month. Sony or Nintendo needs to show stuff like that to have that last marketing push before a game comes out. And then they showed off the Zelda Game & Watch, which I didn't get the Mario one. I think my dad asked me about it, and I think he was going to buy it for me if I expressed interest in it. I had no interest in a little tiny clock thing that's a facsimile of some 70s or 80s Nintendo thing that I didn't give a fuck about back then. The Game & Watch, I don't care about those. No rhyme or reason for this here, but my oldest and first game console I ever owned was the Atari 2600. It's also my least favorite console of all time, of everything that I've ever played, because it was so basic and so rudimentary. There's no nostalgia or I was a kid and this was my first console and that means a lot to me to it. No. Games have just gotten better and better as I've gotten older and older. My favorite games and consoles and stuff are from the last 20 years, basically. I have a couple of Super Nintendo games that are up there pretty high, but for me, all games from PS1 and up till now, they just keep getting better. And that's why my favorite games are more stuff from the last 20 to 25 years than any of that shit that I played when I was a kid. And I'm sorry if people really love that old retro stuff, cool. But just because I'm an older guy doesn't mean that that's the kind of stuff that I love. And so I don't have any ties or nostalgic connections to like old Zelda stuff. The original Zelda game is okay. Zelda 2 I've never played, and it looks like, I'm not going to say it looks like crap, it just looks like something I wouldn't be interested in. They don't get interesting for me until Link to the Past. They don't get interesting for me until Ocarina of Time. They don't get interesting for me until something like the remake for Link's Awakening, because I didn't play the original Link's Awakening. So they show the Game & Watch, and these people are all pissed off. And then finally they show more Breath of the Wild 2, and it was almost like if Nintendo hadn't shown Breath of the Wild 2, they would have stopped being fans. They would have been like, Nintendo, I hate you. And it happened with all of them. It happened with even with Microsoft to an extent, because Microsoft ended their thing with Redfall, a new game from one of the Arcane studios, one of the Bethesda studios that came to Microsoft when they bought that whole entire group. And I think a lot of people were like, Redfall, this is interesting, but should this have been the end of the show? Why not Halo? Why not Forza Horizon? I mean, I think the Forza Horizon games are beautiful and they look like fun, but I don't know that I would put them at the end of a show. But if you're going to end a show on something, most people are thinking it's got to be one of your big tent poles. They didn't even show stuff like Fable and whatnot. So, and they showed Starfield, one of Bethesda's properties. It's now not going to be on any PlayStation things. That's a bummer for me, but I'm not broken up. I'm not going to stop gaming because a game that looks really cool that I would like to have played isn't going to come to my console of choice. But that's because I know how to set my expectations. Final Fantasy VII, my favorite video game of all time. I've said it before on this channel. It's not a secret. My channel icon, or whatever you call it, avatar, is Vincent Valentine from Final Fantasy VII. He's basically my favorite character from that game. Final Fantasy VII Remake was the reason why I got a PlayStation 4 after I had decided that I wasn't going to get any of the new generation consoles back in 2013, 2014. But then that E3 came along, and Final Fantasy VII Remake came along with the Shenmue 3 announcement, along with Last Guardian, and I was like, well, I guess I'm getting a console. Now that's my biggest library of games is the PS4. Final Fantasy VII Remake came out last year. I was hyped for that. I was stoked to play that. I was ready. I bought it. I got not the big expensive special edition, but I got the thick boxed deluxe or whatever it was, collector's edition. And I played that game when it came out, and I loved it. Like, it was beautiful. The graphics were amazing. The voice acting was unbelievable for a game that, the original game was just text on screen. They did a great job, in my opinion, on the voice acting, all of the stuff. And then what the game gave us was just the first disc from the original game's content, which is Midgar and all the stuff that happened there. But in the first game, that's something that can be whipped through in a few hours if you know what you're doing. And I want to say it's probably about a 10 to 12 hour experience if you're brand new to it. And then that's when the game really opens up. That's when the game, it's setting the table in the original game. And in Remake, they fleshed it out into a longer experience. And it was really cool. Yes, it's got a lot of fetch quests, busy work, side questy type stuff that wasn't there in the original game. But it also kind of, for me anyway, it put me boots on the ground in Midgar, experiencing all this stuff, somewhat faithful to the original game's events, but it also took some liberties with it, expanded stuff, and also deviated in the story-wise. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, it was a 9 out of a 10 game for me. It was one of my top 3 games from last year, alongside Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. Those are both great games as well. Final Fantasy VII Remake was probably... Last of Us Part 2 was my favorite game from last year. Ghost and Final Fantasy VII Remake are kind of neck and neck for the number 2 part. But it lost some points for me because they decided to change parts of the story. But I'm not mad about it, because I didn't have any expectation on what it was going to be. If it had been beat for beat, word for word, just, rebuilt completely from the ground up with the new fighting style, which I actually kind of prefer the action style to it than the old traditional turn-based. That's the one change about it that I like. If it had been word for word exactly, and if it had been like one full game for the whole entire game, then it might rival my love of the original game. But as it is, this is a great companion piece. It's like I have Final Fantasy VII, the game, and I have like Dirge of Cerberus, and I wish I had Crisis Core, but I never had a PSP. I have a soundtrack. I have strategy guides. Final Fantasy VII Remake ends up being another one of those things where it's like, here's Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then like here's all these other little things that can go around it that I like. It's just an additional piece to the awesomeness of what is Final Fantasy VII and my favorite game. But I'm not going to shit on the remake just because it wasn't what I may have originally expected, because you've got to set your expectations. You've got to be like, this is their product. This is their passion. This is their love, their blood, sweat, and tears. When these game devs, especially the devs, not the publishers are problematic, but when the game developers themselves have a game that they're making, somebody in there, it was their vision and their idea. That's their thing to make. They don't have to answer to all of us. And we don't have to shit on them. We don't have to threaten to cancel them. We don't have to send them death threats over the internet because they didn't do something that we wanted them to do, or they didn't release it when we wanted them to do. They didn't show it at an E3 show. This is the full loop of this. It's the expectations. We have to stop thinking that they're making this for us. It's a product that we will buy and consume and play and all that kind of stuff. But they have to make the thing that they want to make. They can't just cater and kowtow to us. They have to make what it is that they want. It's sad too, because it's the publishers who are trying to force other shit down our throats. They want to put the microtransactions and the season passes and the day one DLCs and the day one patches and all that kind of stuff on us. And the developers just want to make a game that they hope that we will love. But especially when you have somebody like a Kojima or whatever, they have a vision of what they want to make. And I think that we have to stop thinking that they're making it for us, for me, for you, for that person and that person. They're making it for themselves as something, an artistic expression, just like a painting, just like a song. They make it, they put it out there. If you love it, if you get something out of it, great. If you don't love it, great. That's just the way that it is. Yes, you're spending a lot of money on these games. $60, now $70 is the new normal, except for the Game Pass thing, which I'm still going to talk about. But it's a lot of money, sure, and a lot of time and investment. But you just have to figure out a way to sort of like look at something, assess something, analyze something. And if you're able to and can afford it, buy it and try it for yourself. If not, if something just doesn't look like it's for you, then don't buy it and just go about your life. Like there's rumors right now that Kojima has got some sort of a handshake deal with Microsoft to develop his next project for them, and specifically with their cloud gaming technology. Probably meaning something beyond what Death Stranding does with the internet and the interconnectivity between players, going into the Death Stranding world and seeing something that somebody else has built, and it might help you, it might not. I think he wants to make something that's going to be truly connected, live in the cloud, and not necessarily be, a standard video game. And that's great. I love Kojima, and I pretty much would lap up anything that he makes, even though I haven't played Metal Gear 4 or 5. I haven't played Death Stranding yet. I never beat Metal Gear Solid 3 because I didn't like the step back into the Cold War and Big Boss, which is what sucks about 5. It's the most appealing Metal Gear Solid game to me since the first one, but it focuses on Big Boss, and I just don't like that character. But I still am intrigued by what Kojima does, and when he has a vision for something, it's cool. If he's going to put something like this out for Xbox only through their cloud service, I won't get to play it. But I'm glad that he gets to make it, and I'm glad that somebody out there will like it. And I'm willing to let go of the fact that it's not going to be something I can play, or it's not going to be for me. If he decided he wanted to do a Battle Royale game or something like that, it wouldn't be for me. I'm not going to be pissed off, though, that it's not something for me, because it's not supposed to be for me. I know that sounds weird and maybe counterintuitive, that somebody who makes a thing to sell that thing isn't making it for the people who buy it. But it's an artistic thing, in my opinion. It's the expression behind it of what somebody is making. They want to put it out there because they know it will resonate for some, but maybe it won't for everybody. So anyway, just like I said, expectations, man, just keep your expectations in check. Don't get mad at people who are making things out there and pouring their heart and soul into it if it isn't something that you will play or you will enjoy. Don't shit on those people. Don't fuck with them. Don't try to cancel them. Don't do any of that kind of crap. Don't get mad at companies for not having a presentation that you think meets some lofty expectations. Temper your expectations. You'll be a whole lot better on, what is it, the hope for the worst, expect the worst, but hope for the best? Is that what it is? So you'll be pleasantly surprised if things don't completely, fall apart or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let me try to get through these last few things a little bit quicker, because I am talkative, a chatty Cathy. So I want to talk about two things. Game Pass. We'll keep this quick. Game Pass, the best deal in gaming. Probably so. For whatever that monthly amount is, and I don't even know because I don't care. I don't have Xbox. I don't want to pay a monthly subscription fee for that kind of a thing when it's hinged on having internet. I talked about in that first video that I did, I've talked about in the first video that I did that I don't have constant internet. So I can't guarantee that I'll have internet to back up that Game Pass thing. Like, I've paid for PlayStation Plus and then lost my internet. That's happened twice. It's probably going to happen again. But I like having PlayStation Plus because of the very few online games that I like to play, and the potential to play them with other people. The PlayStation Plus thing is not a horrible thing. Every once in a while they have a game on there, but I will admit that I've never actually played any of the PlayStation Plus games that I have downloaded. Not that I remember, but it's there. And I got my last PlayStation Plus through CD keys and got it for like less than half the price. I don't mind doing that. Now when it comes to, and maybe Game Pass you can do that on CD keys or something like that, but Game Pass, what gets me about Game Pass right now is that I feel like it's going to push Sony into leaning into some sort of a internet streaming system like that where you pay and then you get access to a whole bunch of games. And if they do that, well, then that's going to start pushing, in my opinion, it's going to start pushing the video games on the shelf thing out the door. And I'm not a big fan of that, because all that time that I didn't have internet recently, when I wasn't able to upload any videos like this for 2 or 3 years, I was able to play all my games on my console without any problems. So many people are programmed in their brains to think that if you don't have internet on I still kind of cling to current gen, but it's last gen now. But if you have a PS4 or an Xbox One, well, I'm only going to speak about PS4 because I don't have an Xbox. I know that they had their issues with the online connectivity at the beginning of that generation. On a PS4, if you have a PS4 game, I don't really have a good example of something close by to me to show off. Actually, I do. The current game that I'm playing right now is Vampire, the Don't Nod game. I can pop this game in as a single-player adventure style game. I can pop this game in with no internet, and it'll come up with 1.0 version of the game, and I can still play it. There were updates for this when I started playing this the other day. I have internet now. Updates loaded. That's fine. But this is still a game that's playable, and I can still do it. I've only come across one example of a game where I had a problem with that, and I'll talk about that here momentarily. But stuff like this, I played Days Gone, a problematic game when it first came out. No internet, was able to play the game. Had some glitches, sure, here and there, had some crashes, whatever. Mafia 3, another one that was problematic when it came along. Didn't have internet at the time, was still able to play the game just fine. Glitches, sure. Played the game from start to finish, though, and beat it. Not an issue. There's misinformation out there that people seem to be exposed to somehow, some way, that you cannot play certain games, or you cannot play your games on those older consoles if you don't have the internet. Now, obviously, there are certain games. I do have an example of a game, not that I would ever play it. I might talk about this at a different time, but this Rocket Arena game, well, I'll talk about it right now real quick. At Walmart, this got clearance to 3 cents. I bought up the 3 or 4 copies that we had in stock. The reason why I did that was to take the cases for those and replace the cases on other games that I had that were messed up. This is a game case that came from something, and part of the game case is broken and it doesn't hold it together perfectly fine. So I took a game that was more important to me and took the brand new case from this game and put that other game in it. But that's like an online video game. Think of games like a Destiny. Think of the Division. I think allows you to do some stuff offline, but the most of it is online. There are games that are only online, and they don't do you any good if you don't have internet service. But that's internet. That's not, or that's the game. The game is built that way to be an online only game. I'm smart enough to know when I don't have internet not to buy and try to play those games. But all of these kinds of games, or a Grand Theft Auto, a Red Dead 2, a Fallout game, a Far Cry game, I can play all of those games without having internet. It's possible. That's the word I'm trying to find. It's possible, guys. You can do that on the old console system. I don't know about PS5 100% just yet, because that's a ball of wax I don't want to get into. If I get a PS5, it'll be down the road a ways when they're more available. But like I said, it's possible, and that's what I hate to see gaming go towards. Because of things like Game Pass, Sony's hand might be pushed to respond to that with something of their own. This kind of stuff may go away. I don't want to see that. Now, real quick, I want to talk about some games I've been playing and transition from what I was talking about a moment ago. The one game that I did have a problem with playing without the internet, and it's kind of a weird circumstance anyway, is, of course, what was my most anticipated game last year, despite Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, and Final Fantasy VII Remake coming along. Pardon me. My most anticipated game for the whole year was Cyberpunk 2077. That was a game, first and foremost, let's just say it should not have come out last year. It also should not have been a thing for all those years and then still come out half-baked and undone. It should have been pushed back, but it also should never have been developed for this console or the Xbox One if it wasn't going to play well on those consoles. But I had it pre-ordered for years, and I got my copy on release date. And I remember that was the day of the Game Awards, because I had popped the game in and got it going. Now, this was no internet connection at that moment. I popped the game in, and I started to play it for a little bit. And then the Game Awards started, so I shut the thing off, and I watched the Game Awards, and I was starting to hear the buzz going around about the game was problematic, and CD Projekt Red wasn't allowing people to show any footage from the current-gen consoles, and they could only show footage that was provided by CD Projekt Red. And all the YouTubers that I watch that are into that like drama and craziness in the video game industry started talking about it, and I stopped, and I didn't want to mess with the game any longer. At that time, the end of last year, my internet had been turned back off for a few months, and I didn't get my internet turned back on until like April of this year. But I had 30 gigs of hotspot through my phone plan, and so I used to be doing occasional updates for games that had smaller updates through that. I thought, well, let's try that with Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk had 45 gigs worth of updates within the first couple of weeks. So when I connected to my PS4 with my hotspot, the game immediately started to try to ping to do the patch. And I was like, nope, don't waste any of my hotspot data on that, because it's 45 gigs and I only get 30. It's not going to complete the thing, and it's going to waste that on stuff that I don't want. So I stopped it and deleted and canceled it. And the next time I was like, well, let's just go back in and play the game. We were playing okay the first few hours. Let's try and see what happens here. The game and the system knew that I had pinged, and they knew that these updates were dire, needed, very important, priority, whatever you want to call it. And for the first and only time ever, my console said, you cannot play this game until it's been updated. And I was like, oh. I wasn't able to get that update until like April or May of this year. And then I played Cyberpunk. I loved it. Now, it had problems still. Even with all the updates and stuff that were done up till that point, it still had problems. I had the glitch where I'm just driving down the street, and the next thing I know, I'm flying through the air, and I landed on top of a building behind invisible walls where I couldn't get back down. I had to reload my game. I had several hard crashes. I had some glitchy stuff, some T-poses. I had problems. The game still has issues. The game is not done yet. The game should have been pushed back. Sadly, disappointingly, it should never have come to, like I said, the PS4. But then again, I also don't think you should develop a game throughout the lifespan of a console that's going to be put out on, and it not be optimized to play on that console. Some people will say, despite the fact that we saw it first announced in like 2012 or 2013, that they didn't actually start working on it until a couple of years ago. That's fine. I don't know why so many years of a gap, but they should not have released it for that console one way or another. But it was the money people at the heads. It was the publishing aspect, the executive aspects of CD Projekt Red, and not the developers who made the game. The game was great. If I numbered Final Fantasy VII Remake a 9 out of 10 for last year, that was also my Ghost and Last of Us Part 2 rankings. Even though I played Cyberpunk this year and it was fixed, or as it was playable, it still got an 8.5, an 8 to an 8.5 for me, and loved the game, loved the ending of it, there were problems, like I said, there were issues with it beyond the glitches and whatnot. I loved the story, but I loved didn't love as much some of the way that the game played out. Suffered from some of the typical open world stuff, which is, you have those main missions and it's urgent and you need to do this stuff, but let's give you 50 things on the map to go do first, and then when you go do those things, you're like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like I'm doing what I should do, but oh, there's another thing over there, I better go do that. But like I said, it was great, and I'm hoping that somewhere down the road it gets more patches and updates for the PS4 version, because I do want to play it through again with a different class and do some different stuff in it. And if I do ever get a PS5 and the PS5 version ever gets brought out and it's a good version that'll even look better, because right now I feel like performance is a good thing on the PS5 version, but it's an ugly game when compared to some of the games on the PS4 that didn't have any major problems, like a Last of Us Part 2, like a Ghost of Tsushima. Cyberpunk was kind of ugly on the PS4. But, yeah, I wanted to have a chance to talk about... Cyberpunk on this. And then I'm going to... I was going to talk about some other stuff that I've played. I'll just mention some of the games that I've beat, like, this year. The Mass Effect Trilogy Enhanced Edition... I've played and beat all 3 of those games. Andromeda used to be my favorite of the series. Now 3 is my favorite, and Andromeda is my second favorite. 3 was amazing. I don't understand what the flack was about the ending of it. I heard some people online say Shepard's characterization wasn't good. I don't know. I thought it was fine. The some of the stuff that happened at the very, very end of it was kind of weird. Sci-fi nonsense, which I see in a lot of stuff. As much as I love sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi creators come up with some really crazy shit to explain or to end their stuff. But I enjoyed playing through the whole trilogy, and like I said, 3 is now my favorite out of that. I replayed Life is Strange, and played Life is Strange Before the Storm for the first time. But I'll talk more about that in my favorite games video. I replayed GTA 5 and Red Dead 2. Phenomenal games, still love them. I'll talk more about those in my top 30 video games video. What is some other stuff that I played this year? Oh man, talk about feeling suddenly very unprepared for what I'm doing here. Oh, Biomutant. I played that recently. That was a game that had been coming for a long time, and I was interested in checking it out, and I got to play it. It's a really good game. It wasn't as... I didn't finish Biomutant with the same kind of feelings that I had at the end of Cyberpunk, as in, like, I really loved this game despite its problems. Biomutant, I really liked the game beside its problems, but it had problems for sure. I'm going to try... Whoops, already passed it. I'm going to look at my game completions for the year. Red Dead, GTA 5, Life is Strange Before the Storm, Cyberpunk, Mass Effects, all 3 Mass Effect games, Biomutant. Oh, and my my game of the year so far for 2021, as in games that were put out this year that I played, which so far is Biomutant and this other game, but Resident Evil Village. Great game, loved it. A little bit different than 7. 7 was probably a little bit more overall scary, but Village has a part in it that's the scariest part in any Resident Evil game that I've ever played. It definitely apes a lot of more recent horror stuff, from PT, the Silent Hill playable trailer teaser thing, to games like Home Sweet Home, Layers of Fear, which I played some of those kind of games last year. Layers of Fear, Home Sweet Home. Those Who Remain, I think it was the name of one. Here They Lie. Some really cool stuff. Outlast is a similar style game. There's a segment of Resident Evil Village that totally borrows from those kind of games, and also feels a little bit just like Silent Hill, and it's how gruesome and stuff it was. But anyway, Resident Evil Village so far, of games released this year that I have played, is my game of 2021. But like I said, I've only played 2 games that came out this year, so if I can play some more releases from 2021 before this year is over, then that may change. Okay, so I guess that's really about it for this. This was, like I said, meant to be basically a vlog about video game stuff, things that I've been thinking about in video games. At this point right now, I just have to film and record the video game pickup video that I was going to do, and then whatever the top 30 thing is going to look like. So if the gaming stuff is more up your alley, then that's going to be more of what comes up next. And I guess that just about does it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in one of those next videos.